Hi, this is Marcia.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Marcia. I thought we would be ready to go early, and then I got going doing the dishes and looked at the clock and went, oh my gosh, it's time to record.
I know. Well, a little late start for me, too. I was a little late today, so. But here I am. I have a cup of coffee.
All right.
I have to just, before we get into, well, we always have our first, 20 minutes of non-fiber related conversation. Here's my non-fiber related conversation. I had some friends over last night for dinner, and one of the women that came does not like dogs. And she especially does not like poodles.
Like actively doesn't like dogs, not just isn't a dog person.
She's not a dog person, and she's afraid of them. I'm kind of leery of them, I think. Mm-hmm. Not flat out afraid, but she just doesn't like them and would prefer not to be around them. And she especially does not like poodles, and she especially doesn't like black poodles. So what do I have?
Yes. Okay.
And the reason she doesn't, and I can understand this, the reason why she doesn't like them is that some family member has poodles and they jump on her. So I understand that. And I know this about her. And so anyway, I won't make this a long story. So when they arrived, I had Enzo on a leash, even though he doesn't jump on people. He does want to go over and say hi.
Yeah.
And some people don't like that. And that's fair. So I just, when they came to the door, I had him on his leash and kept him on a short leash. And then we went out in the backyard to sit and have a drink. And then I said, well, I left them out there. There's some other people there too, but I said I had to go in because the timer went off and the food was ready. I had to go get it out and put on the table. And I said, you guys just sit there. I'm going to just do this on my own. That's fine. And I told Enzo, he's down on the patio and I'm up on the deck, and I did the hand signal down and stay. Mm-hmm. And they gasp, kind of, because he does it. And I'm now, I'm 15 feet away. And I go in the house and I get the casserole out and I toss the salad and I slice the bread and I open the wine and come back out. And he's still sitting there 15 minutes later.
Nice.
What a good boy.
Yes.
What a good boy. And that's why we train our dogs, right?
So they can live with us.
Yeah.
More easily.
And then they can be around people who are not comfortable with dogs too. I said to you that's what I wanted. All the training that I was going to do with Enzo, the whole purpose is I wanted him to be a good representative of, a good ambassador for dogs and his breed, because it does seem like with poodles that some people really like poodles and some people don't like poodles. They've had bad experiences with them. I don't know why. I mean, I think he's fine, but it's all about training, really. It's not the dog, it's the dog owner. But anyway, they were very impressed, and I was impressed too. Well, I wasn't saying I was. I kind of figured
you were proud of him.
I was proud of him. Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I was proud of him, and and they were like kind of surprised too. And so So anyway,
that's
training
cool.
pays off.
Yeah,
training pays off. Yeah,
yeah, it does. My niece has a new rescue pit bull, and she's been working really hard with her. And she, like any dog that you don't have from puppyhood, and some that you do have from puppyhood.
Yeah, really.
She has some things that some challenges that she needs to work on, and so she's been, texting me and stuff, and she texted me the other day about a good event, how something that worked, kind of like what you were talking about, not anything as big, because she's still, in the baby step stage. I think she's had her 2.5 or 3 months, about the same amount of time we've had Barry, a little less. Mm-hmm. And, but she texted me to say, oh, this worked and it was so great. Mm-hmm. And it's so nice to have a dog that does things that fit into my life. And, so anyway, I thought that was really cool to hear. It's nice when they are able to, they're able to be a part of your life because they know how to act.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I knew he would stay there. So that was not what I was concerned about. But I don't normally have to do that, like on a Saturday when, my brother comes over and Kim and Gary and the usuals, because they're used to dogs. They're used to Enzo. They're not afraid of him and I can't say she's afraid of him. That's too strong. She just doesn't want to be around dogs. She just doesn't like them. And so when you have somebody like that, you're extra careful about how your dog behaves. Right. And so that's why I normally on a Saturday night, I don't have to make him on a downstay when I go in the house because I just go in the house because there's other people, watching him and usually he just goes and lays down anyway on his own. But, no, I was really proud of him, his behavior. And then when we came in the house and had dinner, he just went and lay down in the entrance hall and like how can you not like a dog that's just a flat dog, like right. looking beautiful, but like, or just spread an eagle in the middle of the living room floor, like ignoring you. So he was a good ambassador.
Yeah.
So should we talk projects or?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Actually, before we talk projects, let's talk a little bit about the prizes for the spin-in. So we've been talking about them just sort of generally, but I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the Three Green Sisters prizes that they've offered us very generously. So there's a grand prize that is an 18 by 18 inch pillow, and it's made from fabric that's designed by a woman named Cheri Magnuson, and she's a shepherd of Coldstream Icelandic sheep in Maine. And she was an engineer, and she's retired and has been, living her dream, she says, of being a shepherd with these Icelandic sheep. So I'll read a little bit from her bio in a minute. But so Three Green Sisters has met her and is interested in supporting her work that she's now doing because she's had to stop. Stop doing the shepherding work. She has a few older sheep that she's keeping, but she's not able to keep breeding sheep and working with sheep. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Cheri Magnuson. Again, Coldstream Icelandic sheep in Maine. Her farm, she says, my farm has been a journey filled with unspeakable joy and grief so raw, I felt as if my heart was being torn apart. The year my first lambs were born, my son took his own life. I am still grieving within. There are still times when sorrow washes over me like the waves of a cold, dark winter sea. As I awaited this year's lambs, my heart was full of expectation. Joy filled my heart as the lambs grew within my ewes, ever-expanding bellies. Now lambs are playing and bouncing about, and hope has welled up in me again, and life has promise. So she started her journey with sheep with that combination of sadness and hope. And now she's actually been diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and so she's had to stop working the sheep, but she's begun doing fabric design. And she says, my fabric design began just a few months ago. I watched a design show where people made their own fabric. It's like a light turned on in me. I can do that. I see designs in everything, the woodlands, streams, flowers, skies, and of course my sheep. So using the forest, a mossy log, some gnarly roots wrapped around rocks, that I can work with, and I have. Some of the proceeds that I receive from my designs are donated to suicide prevention and shelters, both human and animal. So she's now doing this fabric design, and the Three Green Sisters have met her and are using some of her fabrics for their bags, and then they also have this pillow that they've offered with the sheep fabric. So that's one of the prizes. And let me just tell you, I put a link to Spoonflower in the show notes, Marcia. And in particular, the Coldstream Icelandic shop. But what a rabbit hole. Oh my gosh. I had heard about Spoonflower before, but
as you're talking, I'm looking at it. So this is dangerous. Okay.
Yeah. We'll have to have a conversation about Spoonflower when we're done with this. So getting back to our prizes, so we have the pillow, and then in addition to the pillow, Three Green Sisters are also generously providing their Patty style bag as prize. And we're going to have one of them for the summer spin-in. And then one of them, I thought it would be nice for the people who are not participating in the summer spin-in to also have an opportunity to go check out their Etsy shop and have a possibility of winning. So I'll put a thread up in the Ravelry group where I'll have you go and look at her shop and answer some question, some prompt. So I'll put a thread there. We'll have just a regular giveaway thread, and then we'll have one of these bags as a prize for the summer spin-in. And then in addition to that, they're also offering us a coupon code for 15% off, and this goes all the way to the end of the year. The coupon code is EWES2, so EWES2, and it's all caps. That's the coupon code. And so you can use that for 15% off, and they have free shipping in the U.S. on most items. They also make Loom totes and spinning wheel carriers. I know you talked about the bag you bought, Marcia. I think maybe you accidentally bought a spinning wheel carrier. It's so large.
I think I did, yeah.
And then they also have spindle bags and bags for your heddles. Those of you who have rigid heddle looms. And so they have lots of variety on their Three Green Sisters Etsy shop. So coupon code EWES, EWES2 for 15% off in that shop. So thank you to the Three Green Sisters for supporting our spin-in again this summer. We have less than a month to go.
I know. Well, I'll have to talk about that too.
The summer has gone by so fast.
I know where I am in the process. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to projects.
Yeah. But
anyway.
Have you ever seen Spoonflower before?
No, I have not. And as I say, I'm looking at it now, and it's...
so you can design a fabric, and then once you design the premise of it, you can design a fabric, and then once you design the fabric, you can also make it available for other people to purchase. But you can find fabric with anything on it. Honest to God, anything.
So I can find something with poodles?
So I'm sure you could find a million things with poodles. So this morning,
pets.
I was trying to find her shop, just without going to look up the link. And so I just put in Icelandic, for example, and there's fabric with 4 breeds of Icelandic dogs on it. Like that's very niche. There's millions of fabrics with puffins. There's fabrics with the country of Iceland. There's what are they called? Runes, the characters. You know, the like letters. Oh, right. I think are they called runes? I don't know. That comes to mind. Yeah. Anyway, they're the language characters, like the alphabet. They have, put in something and you can find, I'm pretty sure you can find a fabric that has something to do with that thing. You know, my most recent obsession of fountain pens and ink, I'm sure you can find fabrics with that. Just anything you're interested in, somebody has designed a fabric. And if you can't find it, you could design your own fabric.
Design my own. So, well, I'm looking at, and here's, okay, we are getting off topic now, or down a rabbit hole, but I just put in poodle. The style that Cheri is using it's like that mirrored image kind of thing. So it looks like, you know, when you look through like a kaleidoscope?
Yes.
That's kind of what it looks like. And some of her fabrics, she has sheep in there and you can sort of make them out. And so, but just now I was looking at poodles and there is a poodle like that thing where you're looking through the kaleidoscope. So you see the poodle upside down and backwards. And so there's all kinds of poodle fabrics. So anyway,
very, very fun. Makes me want to sew something.
Yeah. Oh my God, so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one with a black poodle and lattes. A black poodle and lattes.
There you go, Marcia.
I don't know what's the connection there. Cute
that would
fabrics.
that would make a cute knitting bag. You could sew yourself a knitting bag with poodles and
Yeah.
lattes.
Oh, and here's a very stylized one. Oh, interesting. Huh.
Okay, so this is
Enough.
an audio podcast. We can't be showing you pictures of all these different fabrics, but if you have not ever gone down the rabbit hole of Spoonflower, proceed at your own risk.
Well, and I
but
just
do take a look.
about I looked at Cheri's fabrics, and she has really interesting fabrics. They're beautiful colors, and they're very sort of geometric. But like I say, it's like, you're looking through a kaleidoscope. That's how it looks. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Some of them you have to really look at them more closely to see that they're actually sheep. That the fabric is created from sheep. So very interesting, and a cool project that she has now to do designing of fabric instead of her shepherding duties. And she says her focus now is writing books and designing fabrics. This is not difficult for me and brings me so much joy. I foresee many years of design and writing ahead of me. So yeah, take a look at her shop in particular. It's Coldstream Ice Spoonflower Fabric Shop. We'll have it in the show notes. But also just dig around in Spoonflower for a while and you'll be inspired, I'm sure. Even if you don't sew, you'll be inspired. All right. So what are you knitting on, Marcia?
Well, right now I'm sitting here knitting on in fact, I just was rustling the paper. It's called Simple Shawl. I've been working on it for, I don't know.
3 years?
3 years, something like that. Anyway, so I'm just knitting on that. And so there's not much more to report on that. I'm just, I've talked about that in the past, so I won't discuss that. But I'm doing I'm now far enough along. I'm doing the border. The whole shawl is garter stitch, and then you do a border. I've done one row of eyelet, and I'm just knitting a row, and then I'm going to start another row of eyelet. Okay. And then I do a little bit, and then you do a picot bind off. But so that's what I'm working on. Let me just say about spinning. I have been spinning a little bit every night, but it suddenly dawned on me, oh my goodness, it's going to end. This contest is going to end. Oh my God. Or the summer spin is ending on September 6th. I have to get myself moving on this project. So I've got 2 bobbins are complete, and I've done a quarter of the third bobbin of the brown that I was spinning. I'm going to do the 3-ply. So I'm going to get moving on that because I have to I have a deadline now. Yeah. The other project I just want to talk about is I've been working on the color work sweater, the Atlas by Jared Flood, that I'm making for my brother. I finished all the color work. And Kelly, remember last time we talked, I was having to figure out how to trap the floats with continental stitch. I had to look that up. Right. The next issue I had is that there several, I think the whole pattern of color work is like 42 rows. Of that, about 10, you actually had 3 colors in a row. Yeah. Oh, wow. And so I wasn't sure, and we had a whole conversation in the last episode about color dominance. But what do you do if you have, you have your dominant color, and then you have 2 other colors that we were calling them the submissives. Right. They're actually called the background colors, I should say. That's what they're really called. But if you have 2 background colors, how do you manage that? Because I can understand the concept of, you have your dominant in your left hand and your background color in your right hand, but if you have 2 background colors, how do you handle it? And so the first row I had, I just would, of those 2 background colors, I would just drop one and pick up the other one and drop one and pick up the other one. Well, what happens is then it keeps twisting your balls of yarn. The yarn coming off the ball keeps twisting and twisting. So you then have to spend all this time untwisting it. And so Kim and I had a trip planned down to the Portland area, and in the car I was talking to her about telling her this, because I was working on my sock because I can't work out because I thought that there must be a technique. I'm going to have to go on YouTube and figure out a technique. And she said, there is a technique. And I don't know what it's called. And before the show we post, I'll see if I can find a tutorial about this. But basically what you do is you have your dominant color in your left hand and you pick one of the background colors and you do the pattern with just those two colors. When you get to a stitch that is supposed to be the third, the third color, or it'd be the background color that you're not knitting with, you just slip that stitch. And so you work all the way around just using the dominant and the first background color, slipping the stitches that are the second background color. Okay. Then when you get to the end of the row, you finish that, you then go and you knit with only the second background color, the one that you did not knit with the first go pass through, and you knit those slip stitches and you slip the other stitches that you, does that make sense?
Yes. So you're knitting two of the three colors you're knitting with. You leave those other stitches just slipped, and then you go back and you knit them separately. So your one row, to do one round, you have to go around twice.
Right. So the row, you have to knit the row twice.
That's cool,
but it's very cool. And then there's not this issue with the yarn twisting and having to do all of this yarn management. The other thing, and I think this is more important, is the way I was doing it, where I drop a color, pick up a color, is I believe it throws off your attention. And so because you're not getting any kind of rhythm, and I think that and I can tell a difference in that row, that I did one row.
Interesting.
But quote unquote wrong way, because there really is no wrong way.
Right.
But
differently.
Differently. And so if you do it this technique that she suggested, your tension is better, I think. And there's less chance of pulling the yarn too tight. So I'll see if I can find a YouTube tutorial about this, because I think it's brilliant.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very cool.
So now that I say all of this about tension, so as I finished the color work, I finished the neckline, and then I washed and blocked it. And I think what I'm going to say is, because I don't do color work, I've not done very much. And this is like a given. It doesn't give the way if you're just using one color, right?
Right.
And so my brother needs to come and try the sweater on before I go any further, because so now basically the body and the sleeves are almost done. I just have to have him try it on and figure how long to make the sleeves, because now remember I did a provisional cast on the bottom of the sweater and the sleeves. So now I have to just pick up those stitches and knit down to the correct length for him. And so he needs to come and try the sweater on for that.
And you have the sleeves. I mean, the body is almost all done. You just have to put, like, if it needs any additional length plus the ribbing, right? And the sleeves, the same thing, right? They're already approximately sleeve length. And you just need to see if you need to add in anything and put on the ribbing. Okay.
Right. But I'm a little concerned that it's going to be small, because that color work has really no give. Not like the bot, do you know what I'm saying? And so it feels, and also, it's heavier too. Like that, any kind of time you do a sweater like that, it's going to be kind of.
Well, it's like 3 layers of yarn.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned. But I have to remember, he likes things more slim fitting. Yeah. He's also male, so he doesn't have breasts. So even though I try it on and I'm like, I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
When he tries it on, it's going to be completely different, because he has a completely different body than I have. Right. So, and I do have gauge. So it's, let's see, he's 38 and this is 41 inches. So he wanted about 3 inches. His other sweater is 3 inches of ease. So it should be fine, right?
Right. It just feels different.
It feels, Yeah.
Well, I will be interested to see how it fits on him and how he likes it. What would be your alternative if it's too tight? Would you go back and do a larger needle size, or? You really couldn't add stitches, right? Because it's... maybe I shouldn't even bring... Sorry, I shouldn't even bring this up.
I'm laughing because I thought about this. It's like, what do I do if it doesn't fit? What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
One thing is I could just finish it and give it to somebody that it fits.
That's
and
true.
Make him another sweater. The other option is just to rip the whole thing out and make the larger size.
But the bottom part would fit.
In theory.
Okay.
Allegedly. I don't know. Or I just rip out the color work and do the color work again. Like the first time you do something, it's like you burn the first pancake.
Yeah, and you're more tense, and so your gauge might be different even if you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something that I do. If it doesn't fit, I'm just thinking maybe I rip it out and I go up a needle size, or because the body was knit on 7s and the yoke, the color work was on 8s.
Yeah.
I don't know. Listeners can weigh in. I guess the first thing is find out, does it fit?
Yeah. I really shouldn't have even said anything because I'm borrowing trouble. There are enough things wrong in the world without me manufacturing something that hasn't even happened.
I have this just popped into my head, Kelly. This is now off topic, but about listeners weighing in. Mm-hmm. The one thing we do need to address, and I forgot that we need to address this in this episode, is the last episode. I started the conversation at some point. I said to you about how you had not left your property since the pandemic started. And Pat, one of our listeners and good friend of ours, commented in the thread, "Didn't you go visit Marcia in Seattle?"
Yes, I did, as a matter of fact.
So it must not have been a very memorable trip, I guess.
No, it was very fast.
It was so fast.
Totally forgot about it.
Yeah, I think that's why we forgot. Yeah. And I'm the one that said, I think I'm the one that said you've not left your property and you came to my house. Anyway.
And to be fair to myself, when I was thinking about leaving the property and when I talked about going to visit at a colleague's house, I haven't driven.
Yeah.
Like the trip to Seattle, I didn't drive. I just sat as a passenger. I honestly have not driven probably more than 5 miles at a time. Myself behind the wheel of the car.
Yeah.
I've gone places with Robert, not very many, but I have gone places with Robert. But actually putting myself behind the wheel of the car on the freeway, for a significant length of time, more than 5 or 10 minutes to get to the store. It was weird. It was a weird feeling to be in the car for that long, driving myself. Yeah. So to be fair to myself, that was what I was thinking of. But yes, it is true. I do leave the property.
So, but I had to laugh when Pat said that because our listeners hold us accountable.
Really? Yes. We can't get away with anything.
No. And also they pay attention.
Yes, better than we do. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so funny. Anyway, so that's it for me for projects. I don't have much more going on than that. That's it.
Well, I didn't have much going on, but this morning, because I felt a little bit guilty, and because I really didn't have anything to knit while we were recording, I did actually get the yarn wound up, and I've started on the sleeve of my my sweater, the dark green forest pattern that I'm doing.
Oh, right. So we have to talk about this, Kelly.
Well, I've gone about 4, 6, 8 rows. Mm-hmm. I've gone almost 8 rows, and I don't see a bad stripe.
Oh, this is good news.
So I think that might be good news. There's a little bit. I mean, I see some, but I'm alternating skeins, and so we'll see. I think it might work.
And the other thing we talked about too, and we did not talk about this in the podcast, the last episode, but after we finished recording, I said to you, if there is a strong variation, can you just knit the whole sweater and then over dye it? Remember we had that conversation,
Yeah.
but it's,
Yeah.
and like just doing a very like low percentage solution of like the terracotta or another color or something. And that might even it out. We had that conversation, but
yeah. So I think, I mean, I'm not going to pass judgment yet. I don't want to jinx myself. But I do feel like it seems to be working okay.
Okay.
Again, I haven't gotten, sometimes you can't tell till you, actually, sometimes you can't tell until you take a picture for Instagram. Yes.
Yes. And you see
or your
the cooling on the
Ravelry page.
left.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I am working on it right now. And so it's back in the rotation. It's got, when you have to wind yarn and join on this, pick up the stitches for this thing. So it was just sitting in a bag because of that. But I've now done those things. And so it's back. It's back in the rotation. It's in a place where I can grab it at night and knit on it. I had been knitting dishcloths at night when I needed something to knit. So yeah, I'm back working on this sweater. This is again the dark green forest sweater, and the pattern designer. Oh, here it is, Christina Korber Reith. Strickhouse site is her Ravelry name, I think. So that's going well. But the other thing I did that was really super fun was I did a weaving project. So right after we recorded, last week, not that same day, but maybe the next day, I decided, oh, you know what I really want to do? I have this warp that I've wound already. It's ready to go. I should put it on the loom. And my original thought was I should put it on the loom. You're going to laugh. So that I can have something that I can just take a break from prepping for classes and go weave for a little bit. Or once classes start, I can take a break from, the first week of classes, hecticness, and go weave for a little bit. If I have this on the loom. So I put it on the loom. It's a Huck Color and Weave project from the Jane Stafford Guild, season 5, which is this year's season. And I had hesitated about it because I really didn't like the look of her sample that she did with two high contrast yarns, a black and a white, and then she calls it a zinger. And she had this green, this limette color. She called it pale limette as the zinger. And I just really, I know I get to choose my own colors, but that just didn't speak to me in the videos. And so I wasn't really excited about it. And also I think of Huck as a solid color, like beige table linens in this. Huck is a lace design, a woven lace. So I always think of it as like beige, that's kind of the color I think of doing, and all solid. So anyway, finally I decided, let's just put this on the loom and do it. Get out of your comfort zone. And I had warped it already. I had chosen not quite as high contrast as hers, but I did use white and gray. It's actually it's kind of a steel blue gray color and white. And then I used red as the contrast color. So I put it on the loom and got it all. Took not so long to thread it. I warped back to front for the first time, which was really cool. For the first time on the floor loom. I think I might have done it at some point on the table loom. But anyway, it worked out really well. I didn't have to get Robert to help me, which, winding on. Do you remember that part of the process where one of us is holding all the yarn threads and the other one is winding it onto the loom? He does not like helping with that process. So it was nice to have a technique that I could use and successfully wind it on myself. So the way you warp front to back is normally I would sit at the front of the loom and I would thread it through the reed. That's the part where you beat. And then I would thread it through the heddles. And then once it was threaded through those two things, I would then tie it onto the back and wind it on. So while you're winding, it's having to go through the reed and through the heddles.
Right.
And tangles can happen, which is what Robert doesn't like. I think it offends his sensibilities of order. He feels like if I was doing it right, it should just wind on with no tangles. Like, why does this have tangles?
But another way of looking at it is the reed and that it's putting it in order.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, he has to look at it a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. So this way, weaving or warping back to front, what you do is you skip over you don't put it through the reed, you don't put it through the heddles. You stick it on this thing on the top of your loom called a rattle. So you like kind of line them up in a semi-organized way, more than semi-organized, like a 3/4 organized way. And then you wind it onto the back beam where it's just going through this thing that's not enclosed. It's just like, basically it's a long stick with nails poking up from it. And you have like 4 or 5 threads in each little slot. And so it's just going through that. So there's a lot less potential for tangling. So anyway, you wind it on. You have this, there's more to it than that, but that's the idea. You wind it all onto the back first, and then once it's all wound onto the back, then you thread going the other direction. So I sat at the back of my loom and threaded through the heddles and then through the reed. Some people sit at the front of the loom and pull it forward through the heddles and then through the reed, but I can get closer to things if I sit at the back of my loom. So that's what I did. I sat at the back of my loom and put it forward. So anyway, I had not done that before on the big loom, the 4 harness floor loom. It was very successful. And then I started weaving. And of course, you know what happened then is I just kept weaving till I was done. I became obsessed. I really did. So Huck is a structure that has, well, like your floats in color work. You have, those yarns that are floating on the back. Well, in Huck, you have floats, but they're on purpose and they're part of the design. So you have these floats floating horizontally across the surface of the fabric. You have plain weave, regular woven fabric, but you also have these floats floating across the surface of the fabric horizontally. Or you can have plain weave and floats floating vertically across the surface of the fabric. And basically, if you look at the fabric, one side has one and one side has the other. So it depends on what's your front, right? So if you have horizontal floats on the front of your fabric, on the back of your fabric, you're going to have vertical floats.
So I'm looking on Ravelry at the fabric, and but the floats are relatively short. They look like they go over maybe like 3 or 4 warps.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 threads. Yeah, it depends on the way that you thread it. The pattern that you're using. But yeah, it goes. I think in this one it went over 3 or 5. I think it went over 3 or 5.
Yes, because some are shorter than I see they're 3. Yes. Okay.
So this was a sampler, so it had a little bit of each. And then there's another fabric that you can make that's called Huck Lace, where you have floats. You have both floats at the same time, and so it makes a really lacy open fabric. And so the project for this was to do something called a Gamp. And a Gamp is where you can, well, let me stop and go back a little bit. So the thing I really objected to about this project that I was leery of was this thing called color and weave. And color and weave is where you alternate colors in some kind of color sequence. So you alternate colors in the warp, but you also alternate colors in the weft while you're weaving. So you might have a sequence of colors where you go light, dark, dark, light. And you just keep going that pattern over and over again. Or light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, alternating. And that's the pattern. So some kind of sequence of lights and darks that you're repeating over and over and over. And so there's a lot of different sequences that you can use, right? I mean, make them up. You can just combine lights and darks in any kind of way. Well, what we were doing in this project was something called a Gamp, which allows you to systematically pair sequences in the warp, all the different combinations that you have in your project, with the sequences in the weft, all the different combinations. So if your warp is going light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, you can have your weft then also doing light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. But then you can also have your weft doing something else. And so I had, I don't know, like 5 different sequences.
Mm-hmm.
And then I paired them with the same 5 sequences in all different combinations.
Okay, so let me go back. So is that why it sort of looks like it's forming squares?
Yes.
Kind of like okay.
Each one of those squares is a different combination of the sequences.
A different sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's called a Gamp. And you can do that with these sequences. You can also do it just with colors. So like you have yellow in your warp, and then you can pair it with yellow in your weft, blue in your weft, red in your weft, green in your weft, and you can see all the different combinations, what they do with each other. And so there's all kinds of different Gamps in weaving where you can test things. So that's what I did. I made 3 different Gamps, and then because I was following a pattern. When I got done with the pattern, I had something that was not dish towel size, which is what I like to make, but turns out it was like napkin size. So what I did was I'm going to make them into napkins, these Gamps. Okay. So yeah. And then I made a couple of dish towels. So I had fun. It's not my favorite look. It's a little busy, I think.
Well, let me say, I like it. But I guess I like busy. Well, and I like color too. I understand what you're saying about you like, you don't like high contrast.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about weaving, so I'm going to say something. Bear in mind, I don't really necessarily know what I'm talking about. But I wonder if she has used the high contrast so you can see the difference in the different sequences in the pattern, right? Yeah. Is that why? Okay.
Yeah, because the whole idea of this project was not to make something. The idea of the project, it was to make something. It was to make Gamps. And then you would keep a set of Gamps in your studio so that you can then go look at them for inspiration and say, oh, which one would I like to put into this project? Oh, I really like the way this little square looks. Okay, I'm going to use this. What was this? This was this combination paired with that combination. Okay, now I know what I'm going to put in my project. And I didn't want to do that. I don't want to have a pile of Gamps. I wanted to make napkins.
I know.
Or something, that I can use. And I can still go and look at them if I keep them. I can still go and look at them. But that's the idea, is you were making something that you could then use as a sample to see what you'd like to do in your next project.
Yeah.
So it does make sense that that's why you would do the high contrast, because you can see better. Not only can you see what's going to happen, but you can also see better to look at it and say, wait, what was this combination again? If your colors are so close, you might have a harder time figuring out what was I did in this little square. So, I mean, you could label everything. Yeah. She has these beautifully labeled Gamps that she shows us on the the videos. They tell you just what it was in the warp and what it was in the weft, and they're teaching tools, right? So she has them all really well laid out, and I just want to weave dish towels.
Well, I sort of I understand. It's like I like to make something that's useful. The idea of making something. I understand why you make something that's a sample, right? I understand that, but I still would like to be able to use it in some way, So I get that desire.
If I were maybe more of a weaver, or if I did weaving for like to make things for sale, or like if I was a weaver for my job, maybe I would make a bunch of Gamps and have them there for inspiration when I needed to kind of come up with an idea for a project. I don't know. I'm not there yet where I want to make things Gamps just to have Gamps. But I did make a couple. I do have a sampler from one of the other episodes that is just hanging in the studio off the side of the shelf. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm kind of there. I'm not quite there, but I don't think I'll ever wear it as a scarf.
Yeah.
It's just hanging as a decoration. So,
well, it's very pretty, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. And then when you wash it, so the pictures you're seeing are unwashed. I now have pictures of them washed, which changes it because instead of being vertical and horizontal threads, all sort of stiff and burlappy in place, they all sort of nestle into each other and you get these nice curves. So you get some interesting curved designs in your weaving that you wouldn't get. You don't see until you wash it. So I'll put up the before and after pictures in my project page because I think is really cool how it changes. So, and then once I got done with that, the other project that I have is that I just wound a warp for a baby blanket. All the cotton yarn was sitting there in the studio as I was weaving, and I kept looking at it and thinking, I should do something with this spirit yarn. And so last night I just wound it. It's not on the loom or anything. It's just a warp chain that's it changed in form from being yarn in balls in a bag to being yarn in a warp chain on the shelf. But now when I'm ready to weave again, I that part of the process is done, and I can just start by putting it on the loom. So those are my projects. I was pretty industrious this week. I should say, obsessed this week with the weaving. Yes.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty.
Thank you.
Someday, maybe. Well, I always say this, but when things calm down here, project wise, house project wise, this winter weave along coming up, I will. Maybe I'll actually weave something.
Yeah. It's another rabbit hole.
Well, and I don't have as much yarn now because I got rid of so much. Did you see this is just a side note. Did you get the picture I sent you of my yarn stash?
Yes, I did. It looks very well organized.
I should put a picture of it in the show notes. I have everything now in little boxes, organized by weight. I have like 3, those bags that like down comforters come in. I have 3 of those, and 2 have the yarn from the 2 trips to Scotland, and the 3rd one has the yarn that I purchased on the trip to Iceland. But when I sent you the picture, I think my comment was, there is absolutely no reason for me to buy any yarn ever again. And the other thing I did too, Kelly, is because I had all these little boxes. They're sort of like the size of like a shoebox. They hold about 6 skeins of fingering weight yarn approximately. And then I had like those plastic bags that sheets come in or whatever. I have like the quantities of yarn. Like if I have a quantity of for a sweater. And the sweater I know that I'm going to make, I printed out the pattern and I stuck it in that bag with that yarn, so I don't know what I was planning. And then the other thing too is I have a lot of unfinished projects. Like I have the skull and the rabbit, and I bought yarn to knit a poodle. And remember, I started a color work tea cozy. It was sheep. I've not finished, and they're all stuffed in bags, that are all stuffed in the closet. And so I took those out and I put each one in its own little box and labeled it. So now I see them. And so hopefully I'll get back to working on them and not let them just languish because, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. It's inspiring when you see it. I mean, the floor of my studio has just, I brought down, I don't know why I did, but I brought down the bags. They're the same comforter kind of bags of cotton yarn that I had upstairs, and I brought them down and I put them in the studio. I don't even remember why I brought them down. Maybe because I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for that color and weave. Maybe at that time I brought them. Anyway, I haven't put them away. They're still sitting there. So the whole time I was weaving, they were sitting there, right? So you could just call it a mess because I haven't put stuff away. But because I hadn't put it away and I could see it, the whole time I was weaving, I was kind of in the back of my mind mulling over what I could do and kind of getting inspired. So
yeah.
For me, that is very definitely that I have to have things in sight.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's true even in other parts of my life, the desktop on my computer, most people look at it and go, oh my God. In fact, I when I first started doing Zoom and I didn't know how to make it so that the students couldn't see my whole desktop, before I learned, how you can manage that, I took all the things on my desktop and I just dumped them all in one folder to put them away because I didn't want them put away. I just wanted them temporarily put away, like you when you run around your house grabbing things to put in the closet. And then you just shut the closet door when guests are coming. That's what I did with my desktop on my computer because I normally have a lot of things out. And the reason they're out is so I don't forget to use them. Have them out for a purpose. They're not just sitting there on my desktop for no reason. Oh, some things are. And some things, sometimes I go through and I clean out. I get rid of stuff that I don't need anymore. Or I do put it in a particular place. But if I want to save something, it's like, I automatically save it to my desktop and then I figure out what I want to do with it. So the out of sight, out of mind thing for me is really bad. I like to have everything out where I can see it. So I can see why you would want to do that.
But that does not, I have to say, I will take a picture and post it in the show notes of how I've got everything organized. I will say, though, it is not the fleeces that I have.
Right.
Those are in another place. So that's another whole.
Well, that's a different stash. Yeah.
Yes, and what I always said about my stash is you can't think of it like everybody always seems to be sort of embarrassed or feel guilty about their stashes. I was like, it's a painter wouldn't say that about their paints.
That's right.
You have to remember, it's like art. It's supplies.
It's your supplies,
It's our supplies, But anyway, okay.
So, Marcia, we have a spinning topic for this week, and what I wanted to talk about this week was our hand spun. The knits that we've done from our hand spun. And just kind of, is there anything in particular that people might be interested to know about them? So I'm going to just talk about my sweaters. And then you can talk about the stuff that you've knit with your hand spun. The very first hand spun sweater that I knit was a featherweight. And I had this yarn. It was lace weight, probably lace weight. I used camel. One of the plies was camel and one of the plies was silk. I actually spun that yarn without knowing what I was going to do with it. And then once I had it, I thought, I think I could make one of those featherweight sweaters. So that's what I did with that one. And that was interesting to knit with because it was so light. And that sweater is nice because it's really super light. I mean, the featherweight sweater was designed to be a Hanafetic pattern, I think, was designed to be light, but then the using lace weight yarn, using such thin yarn for it. And then also the fact that it's camel, not wool and silk. It's just a super, super lightweight sweater, but really warm. I like that sweater a lot. So, and then another sweater that I knit where I did not spin the yarn particularly for. In fact, I spun the yarn for a blanket and then I never made a blanket, was the Funky Grandpa sweater. That was the second one that I knit out of hand spun. And I used, it's mostly natural color, but some of the yarn was over dyed. And that was the idea was I was going to make a striped blanket with the gray yarn and the over dyed. And so that was that Funky Grandpa sweater with the stripes. It has stripes down the sleeves and stripes on the body. Both of those were 2 plies. I know you spin, the sweaters you've made have been 3 plies, right?
Yeah, they've all been 3 plies. I'm not sure why, but they all have been.
Well, 3-ply yarn is nice, nice and round. And so I can see why you would do that. I think because I made the yarn before I decided what to do with it. They particularly were 2-ply.
What I like about the featherweight, the camel and silk that is very lightweight because it's lace weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you just said. But the Funky Grandpa, I don't know, what weight would you say that yarn is? It's not worsted. It's like DK or sport.
I think that's probably, that's probably fingering weight to maybe some places sport. But it's very uneven. So there were places in the sweater where I was afraid, like, oh my gosh, this is so thin. It's going to look wholly moth-eaten before it's even done. Because it was, it was a fairly early spinning. It was not, it was not spun in recent years. I knitted it not that long ago, but it was spun, it was spun more than 15 years ago because I spun most of it. I think I spun maybe all of it at the last house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say about it, though, it's very lightweight. Mm-hmm. It's a very light feeling sweater, and I don't know if that's because it's the wool. Is that because it's 2-ply? But my sweaters are more dense, kind of. I don't know if that's my spinning technique. I don't know if that's.
I think it's the type of
3-ply.
I think it's more the type of yarn and the preparation of the fiber, because all of the Funky Grandpa sweater, the one I'm knitting on right now. Actually, I think all of my sweaters have been from fleeces. Mm-hmm. So it's all been carded preparation. Yeah. None of it's been from top, commercial top, which gives you a much smoother yarn, but also a more dense yarn.
And all I have to talk about, I have hand spun. I've made some socks for Ben. I've made a couple of hats out of hand spun, but I would say I really only made 2 sweaters. Both of them were spun with roving, commercially prepared roving. And the first one was Corriedale top, which is very smooth and then the second one, remember, I combined different fibers. I had different wools. I had silk and I had alpaca in there.
Oh, yeah.
Which also is going to make it I think the alpaca and the silk is going to make it denser,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so there are different styles of yarn will give you a different sweater. All of my sweaters, let's see, the other sweater I have, I'm just thinking about what else I have. The bulky CVM that I made, the Orcas Run sweater. Yeah, that was a carded preparation, and so a light yarn, real puffy. And then I have that Targhee Lamb 3-ply. That's the first one I did with a 3-ply, was that one that I did last summer for the summer spin, and the brown, the dark and stormy, made from the brown Targhee Lamb. That one I actually spun on purpose for the sweater. And then the Orcas Run, that's that big Cowichan style sweater. I also spun that one on purpose for that sweater. So there's been a couple of sweaters where I actually spun the yarn particularly for the sweater, but most of mine have been yarn I spun and then later decided to make a sweater out of. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with this one that I'm working on now. When I started spinning the CVM, and this one is a 3-ply. This is the second 3-ply. This is about a sport weight, I think. This dark green forest that I'm doing now in the terracotta color. I started spinning that yarn without having any idea what I was going to do with it. Mm-hmm. And so I had several skeins of it, and then I thought, I guess I can make a sweater. So that's when I started, I think I finished up the skeins knowing that I was going to make a sweater. But when I started and most of the spinning, I had no idea what I was going to do with the yarn once I was done.
Yeah. Well, say my 2 sweaters that I made, I knew I was going to make. I wanted a sweater quantity, but I didn't know what sweater I was going to make. And then what I say, this is the beauty of Ravelry, is you don't need to know. You don't have to spin to the pattern, because I just did a swash and figured out my gauge, and then I started looking for sweaters in that gauge, and then something that would. A sweater that was mostly just stockinette, did not have a lot of patterning in it, because the combo spins are the pattern, kind of, right? All the different coloring. I didn't. That would any kind of lace or cables would get lost in that. So
Yeah.
But I'll say the two patterns is kind of funny because the two sweaters that I made, the first one was called Beeline, and that's interesting. It's a top-down raglan sleeve pullover, and I think it's called Beeline because it has it does have I say lace detail. It's not really lace, just a yarn over. It makes these little holes that run from a sort of like the like on either side of your hip. No, I take it back. They run from under your arms and they go at an angle down to the front of the sweater. So it has this detailing.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured it's not like having lace or cabling. It was just a little tiny detail. So it's not super noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it had been a solid color, it'd be more noticeable. But Beeline, and then the second one I did was the pattern is Simple Summer Tweed Top-Down V-Neck. And both of them I realized... I know that name. Both of them I realized today when I was making the notes are by Heidi Kermeyer.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them, I didn't realize that. But nice patterns. But that's what's so great about Ravelry is that if you have a yarn, you just do a swatch, do your measurement, and then you can figure out a sweater based on that gauge.
Yeah.
So easy to find a pattern.
Well, yeah, because I was, for the Dark and Stormy and for this one, I had an idea of what pattern I thought I might use, but then once I did my gauge swatch, there was no way I could use that pattern. So I did the same thing you did, make a gauge swatch and then go searching. But in the back of my mind, I had a pattern like this is fingering. The one I'm knitting now is like a sport weight, maybe fingering to sport weight. And I thought, here's a sport weight sweater that I really like. But I didn't have the right gauge. So I had to go searching for something else. Oh, I should say, we talked a little bit about beginner yarn and, people wanting to make things with their first yarn, and that, you had made a hat that weighed 5 pounds.
Yes.
So I wanted to say, I was thinking about this, and I thought, I should talk about Robert's vest. So I made a vest for Robert, same yarn as same fleece as the Funky Grandpa. So it was a very early fleece, and I made yarn out of it, and it was so dense and also thick. It was probably an Aran weight yarn, maybe bigger in some places. And I found a vest pattern, and of course, at that time, this is probably the late 90s, early 2000s. I had just started knitting, and I found a pattern that I wanted to make. Of course, I didn't know anything about gauge swatching, really, so I didn't gauge swatch. I just thought, this looks like the size of regular yarn. Like, in my head, there was a size of yarn, like regular yarn. Probably worsted weight was my thought process. But, yarn had a regular size. And so this looks like regular sized yarn. So I could make a vest out of this. So I got the pattern, I got the needles that they said, and I knit him this vest. And it was it's a gray yarn, 2-ply. And when I carded the wool, I put little pieces of silk noil that I had dyed. There's a bright pink and a bright turquoise and a dark blue in there. And so there are little specks, like little dots, pops of color in the yarn. So I made him this vest. It's so heavy and dense, and he likes it. He wears it, but it's also so big. Like it's huge on him because I didn't know anything about gauge. I just knit the pattern and looked like it was right. So anyways, I like it, and he looks good when he wears it. But when I feel it, it's like, no wonder he's so hot. He's like, I can't wear this very often because it makes me so hot. And no wonder he's so hot. It's like wearing a bulletproof vest.
Well, I was going to say, imagine how hot it would be if it had sleeves.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it looks nice. It looks nice on him. He wears it. He'll wear it like a lot of times he'll wear it on Christmas Eve, or if we go out in the wintertime, if we go out to dinner somewhere, he'll wear that vest, and it's gotten quite a lot of wear. But yeah, it definitely was a different yarn than what I'm spinning now.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I thought this would be kind of a fun thing to just think about all the different sweaters that we've made, and if there was anything about them that maybe would be helpful for people thinking about what they're gonna do with their yarn.
Yeah. I did look up, for some reason I thought with the two sweaters that I made, because they're combo spins, I thought I had alternated skeins on the body. I did not. I just knit.
Oh, okay.
Which I was surprised. I mean, I turned the sweaters inside out this morning to look at them, and no evidence. And I went and I looked at my show notes, and I don't mention it. So I don't think I did alternate skeins on the body. I did alternate skeins on the sleeves, though. Because there was more striping going on, because you're talking about a much smaller circumference circle for the sleeves than the body.
So then the stripes would be wider on the sleeve.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Yeah. And maybe that's why you didn't, was because you wanted to actually experience what that striping was going to be like. Yeah. In the body, the main body.
The second one, I wore the first trip to Scotland. I wore it for pretty much every day for 2 weeks. I was looking at my notes in the Ravelry, and very comfortable sweater to wear. Really, I mean,
the second one,
you could wear that. The second one. Or no, the one
with the alpaca and the silk in it.
Yeah, okay. That fiber that you can wear that just like over a tank top or something. It's that comfortable. I was just going to add that as soon as I finish the yarn that the one that I'm spinning now, my plan is to start a sweater for Ben. So I can report in on that too. And I have an idea about what I want to make, but that doesn't mean it's going to work out. I had this, it was all going to be sort of this barber pole yarn. But then I found out I didn't have enough. So then I had to change the plan and get more of that chocolate brown, bitter chocolate it's called, to make stripes. But I don't even know if that's going to look good. I don't know if it's going to look good until I swatch, I don't know if it's going to look good having barber pole colorway combined with a solid. And I'll have to figure it out.
That is one of the things about hand spun, is that you have to be you kind of have to be open.
The last thing, Kelly, if we're done on that, but just related to spinning, I just wanted to a shout out and thank you to Nan for Now. She's on Ravelry. She's Nan for Now, but Nancy. And I don't know if you remember, but I think it was in Morning Coffee, or I don't know where it was which thread it was, but she posted that she had a Nitty Naughty is what she called it, that she was just going to give away. And I contacted her and I said I was interested in it. You told me just now, and before we recorded, you were telling me that it's actually called a spinning weasel. And it's like a stand with a wheel on it it's like four arms stick out that have pegs. And I think that, what you do is at the bottom, then there's a rod. I think you put your bobbin on that, and there's a fishing line that goes over it. I think it acts like a Scotch tension so your bob is just not spinning freely. And then I think, and I've not experimented with it yet. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll say I've not experimented with it yet. I think what you do is that you can then adjust these pegs to determine how long your skein is going to be. And then it has a counter on it. So one of the arms, as it spins, is a little bit longer than the others. And every time it hits a counter, just like like those old-fashioned counters for counting people going through a gate at a concert or something. Right. It's like that. And every time it hits that, it counts. So, and then if you know how many times that wheel, how many times the yarn has wrapped around that wheel, then, and then you can figure out your yardage. You can
Yeah, that's nice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to say is, so she lives in Oregon. Nancy lives in Oregon, sort of near Salem, Oregon. And so Kim and I drove down one weekend, I guess it was last weekend, to pick it up. And she was very nice and gave this to me, and she was lovely to meet her. And she has, her dog is a Wheaten Terrier who's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a really nice garden. She was showing us all around her garden, her thing. But what I wanted to tell you is she has a cotton plant. And when she was telling us that, and I had forgotten this, but we had a contest, and you sent her one of the prizes was some cotton,
Right?
and you put a cotton pod or seeds or something in there.
Oh, she won a cone of yarn from Sally Fox, and Sally
Yes.
Fox puts a little cotton ball in the
Sally
package.
Fox
Mm-hmm.
did. Anyway, she grew it. She has a cotton plant from
That is
the
so
seeds
cool.
that she got. Yeah, so I just wanted, just a shout out to Nancy, say thank you again for the spinning weasel. I've not tried it, but I'm going to try it on the yarn that I'm spinning now. I'm going to try and figure out how to wind it onto it. And I was just looking too, and that there are of course, there's a YouTube video about a spinning weasel. But anyway, it was a really fun trip, and nice to meet Nancy. And then Kim and I had the weekend down there. We went to some wineries and had both dogs. We did some hiking, and it was really fun. So we would not have gone down there if it wasn't for Nancy offering me the spinning weasel.
Nice.
I think that's it for me.
Okay, well, I just wanted to mention the patron pattern giveaway. So all of our patrons should contact me and let me know the pattern of your choice, up to $8. You can contact me through Ravelry. I'm at 100 Projects. I'm 100 Projects. Or you can email us toUseFiberAdventures.com. Or you can message me on Instagram. I'm 100 Projects on Instagram. And let me know what pattern you like, and I'll get you that pattern. If you're a patron, you get a free pattern. So it's a nice way for us to be able to thank you and also support pattern designers. So it's been really fun. And we'll talk a little bit next time about all the different patterns people are selecting, because it's kind of a cool list. So just wanted to mention that. Get your pattern request into me. And then also our summer spin-in ends September 6th, which I think we've talked about already. But just a little reminder on that. So that's it for now.
I have to get off the phone so I can start spinning, because I have a deadline now, Kelly.
Yes, right. Okay.
All righty. Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit toUseFiberAdventures.com.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2Us
Doing our part for World Fleece.